Assalamu alaikum everyone. I hope you can hear me. أعوذ-
Yes, I can.
Okay, thank you. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. رب اشرح لي صدري ويسر لي أمري واحلل عقدة من لساني يفقهوا قولي واجعلني وزيرا من أهلي هارون أخي أشد به أزري أشرك في أمري كي نسبحك كثيرا ونذكرك كثيرا إنك كنت بنا بصيرا لا حول ولا قوة إلا بالله العلي العظيم وصل اللهم على محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين والحمد لله رب العالمين. Assalamu alaikum everyone. I hope there's a lot of background noise, so I hope you guys can hear me. That's the problem. There's something going on outside. All right, so we will start with the rays. We are reading the supreme sign, the seventh ray, and we are in the second chapter. Just to recall a little bit, this was the journey of the traveler, and then he went through a stage of going through the whole universe, trying to find meaning in the universe, and then realizing, based on the evidence and the proofs that he found in the universe, to connect with his source of existence. Right now, we are going to do page 174 of the race. Continuing on the second part of the journey, where now the author is sharing all the truth of divine unity. And he's been going through different truths that he started off with the seeing absolute divinity, absolute dominicality, and perfections. And this all ties into also the fact that when you see absoluteness in your conclusions, that you're by witnessing the universe and seeing the qualities that you see in the universe, you see that everything is being organized by must be organized by an absolute source, because of the things within themselves don't have those qualities. Based on the results that we look at the things, we see that everything shows a, a care, dedication, something that has nurtured it, has been shows these qualities of mercy and organization and very artful and skillful things that we are observing. And we see that when we look at the things, that those things don't show any of signs that they possess those things, or even to create or give existence to any of that. So now we're going to go into the fourth truth in terms of what sovereignty is. And yeah, one theme I'm noticing also in all these truths is the author is making the point of not to go into the Arabic word of shirk, or assigning partnership to the absoluteness. So all these truths, once you see these, when you see the divinity, the dominicality or perfection, and now sovereignty, shows that all these qualities in their absolute form cannot accept any form of association or partnership. So it has to be exclusive and unique to the absolute being. So let's start this discussion. Inshallah, let's do this. 1 second. And this is, yep, so the fourth truth, sovereignty. Whoever looks at the cosmos with comprehensive attention will see it to resemble a most prosperous and active kingdom, a city administered most wisely and ruled most firmly. He sees all things and all species obediently engaged in a particular function. So now the thing is to look at the cosmos with comprehensive attention, which I would admit not everybody does most of the time. So comprehensive attention is necessary when we look at the universe to see all those signs of the universe. So look at the cosmos with comprehensive attention. Now, when you look at it with comprehensive attention, you would see, wow, what is going on in the universe? It seems very organized. It's active. There's a lot of activity going on. Most prosperous and active kingdom. A city administered most wisely and ruled most firmly. He sees all things and all species are obediently engaged in a particular function. And we saw, I think, in the first truth, how everything is performing worship in their existence, in their being. So every creation, every event is meant to perform a duty, a particular function. And according to the military metaphor contained in the verse, gods are the armies of the heavens and earth, which is Quran chapter 48, verse 4. It's interesting how the verse is also the military metaphor used because of all the organization and administration of the whole universe. All the things that are in there are obedient and show the signs that they are being serving the purpose of the one who has employed them. So gods are the armies of the heavens and earth, the prevailing creative commands, imperious orders, and kingly laws enunciated in those numerous armies that extend from the hosts of the atom, the battalions of the vegetable kingdom, the brigades of the animal kingdom, to the armies of the stars, and embrace both the lowliest soldier and the loftiest commander. Embrace both the lowliest soldier and the loftiest commander. They all indicate self-evidently the existence of an absolute sovereignty and a universal authority. So this is based on the verse, gods are the armies of the heavens and earth. And it's an interesting how this verse also, like Junudullah in Arabic, armies of the creator of the universe are prevalent in the heavens and the earth. So as we can see by attentively and observing the universe, that all that we see are nothing but they seem to be obedient, and the commands show that they are wisely administered. So if anybody wants to comment on this, please, you are welcome to do so. And I will continue on. My goodness, what is this? 1 second. All right, I'll continue on. So there is then a truth of absolute sovereignty, and there can be no truth of assigning partners to God. For according to the decisive truth of the verse, there can be no truth assigning partners to God, for according to the decisive truth of the verse, were there to be in the heavens and earth gods other than God, verily they would be corrupted. This is Quran chapter 21, verse 22. There is the truth of absolute sovereignty. So now that we see the universe and see all the things are being as if they're coming, they're very just like a soldier obeys the commands of a ruler, follows the exact order what the ruler is asking the soldier to do. So everything in creation, besides human beings or the ones that have consciousness, of course, are following whatever has been they are commanded to do by the absolute source. And of course, the human being, things get a little more complicated because of the free will that is prevalent given to human beings. And then human beings have their option to either live in the way that their Lord wants them to be, or choose their own way. But even regardless, everybody still follows the order of the universe. So if numerous hands all engage assertively in the same task, the result will be confusion. Yep, numerous hands all engage assertively. So assertively in the same task, the result will be confusion. If there are two kings in one country or even two headmen in one district or in one household, order will disappear and administration be replaced by anarchy. But on the contrary, we see everywhere such order, from the wing of the fly to the lamps of the heavens, from the cells of the body to the signs of the planets, that there is no possibility for the intervention of any partner in God's affairs. No possibility for the intervention of any partner in God's affairs. Sovereignty is moreover a station of dignity. Sovereignty is moreover a station of dignity. To accept a rival would flout the dignity of sovereignty. The fact that man, who needs the assistance of many people on account of his impotence, will kill his brothers and offspring in the cruelest fashion for the sake of some petty, apparent, and temporary sovereignty, shows that sovereignty rejects all notion of partnership. If so feeble a one acts thus for the sake of so petty a sovereignty, so feeble. Okay, if someone is such a feeble person acts thus for the sake of such a petty, for the sake of sovereignty, it follows that the possessor of absolute power, the master of all creation, will never permit one other than himself to participate in his sacred sovereignty, the means to his real and universal dominicality and divinity. Since this truth has been established with firm proofs in numerous places throughout the Risale Nur, and especially the second station of the second ray, we refer the reader to those pages for further discussion of it. Through witnessing these four truths, our traveler came to know divine unity with the degree of certain and clear witnessing. His faith shone, and with all his power he said, "There is no God but God. He is one. He has no partner." In brief allusion to the lesson he derived from this station, we said in the second chapter of the first station, There is no God but God, the one, the unique, to whose unity and the necessity of whose existence point the witnessing of the sublimity of the truth of the manifestation of absolute divinity, as well as the witnessing of the sublimity of the comprehensiveness of the truth of the manifestation of absolute dominicality that requires unity, the witnessing of the sublimity of the comprehensiveness of the truth of the perfections that arise from unity, the witnessing of the sublimity of the comprehensiveness of the truth of the perfections that arise from unity, and the witnessing of the sublimity of the comprehensiveness of the truth of absolute sovereignty that prevents and contradicts the existence of any partnership. So that is what the conclusion based on seeing absolute sovereignty the author is sharing with us. Would anyone want to speak or say anything on this section on absolute sovereignty? So all these absoluteness is something that is part of our duty in this world, why we are given existence. And I think the author is sharing that how we can work towards it. Faria, you have anything to say? No? Okay. Oh, you don't hear me? Nobody hears me or something? Can somebody say if they can hear my voice? Or okay.
Yeah, we hear you.
Thank you so much, Brother Ali. Faria, you don't hear me, I guess. All right, so if there's any comment, please go ahead. If not, we can move on to the next. All right, then let's move on to the next section. Then that restless traveler addressed his heart and said, the fact that the people of faith, and particularly those affiliated with the Sufi order, are constantly repeating the words, no God but He, and recalling and proclaiming God's unity is an indication that the affirmation of God's unity comprises many degrees. The restless traveler addressed his heart and said, the fact that the people of faith, and particularly those affiliated with the Sufi order, are constantly repeating the words, no God but He, La ilaha illallah. There's no God but He, La ilaha. And recalling and proclaiming God's unity is an indication that the affirmation of God's unity comprises many degrees. Such affirmation is moreover a most enjoyable, most valuable, and most exalted sacred duty. So affirming this is moreover a most enjoyable, most valuable, and most exalted sacred duty, instinctive function, and act of worship. So normally we just take it as act of worship, but it is constantly reviewing and revising our stand on seeing La ilaha illallah is what we are here for. And it is our, yep, as he says, most enjoyable, most valuable. That's why the changes in life, whatever events we go through, everything is in constant change, transience in this world, all these things, the enjoyments, the different moments of sadness, all the variations in our existence, sickness, health, light, dark, whatever we go through in different degrees, is all basically for us to confirm our faith, our realizing that La ilaha illallah, no God but He, and basically connect our existence back to what our purpose in life is for. So let us then, in order to attain a further degree, open the door of another stopping place in this abode of instruction. So let us, in order to attain a further degree, open the door of another stopping place in this abode of instruction. For the true affirmation of God's unity we seek is not some imaginary species of knowledge. That's an interesting phrase. The true affirmation of God's unity we seek is not some imaginary species of knowledge. So it's talking about what the true affirmation of God's unity entails. It is rather an affirmation that, in terms of logic, is deemed the opposite of imagination. That is far more valuable than cognition based on imagination. Far more valuable than cognition based on imagination. So what is cognition that is based on imagination? If somebody can clarify that. So I can understand imagination is something imaginary, it's not real. It's possible, but it's not. It's still imaginary. But confirmation, true affirmation, like 2 + 2 = 4, is definitely based on your whole, requires your reasoning, your logic, and then basically based on some evidence and proof that you see in the universe, that you can say by looking at the qualities, yep, this is, I confirm that there must be a creator. But this cognition based on imagination, okay, so that is the result of proof. That is designated a knowledge. So rather, affirmation that in terms of logic is deemed the opposite of imagination, that is far more valuable. So affirmation in terms of logic is far more valuable than cognition based on imagination. So I guess in imagination, you do use some cognitive abilities to imagine things. That is the result of proof. So affirmation is based on proof. That is designated a knowledge. Let's continue and then we can discuss this. The true affirmation of God's unity is a judgment. True affirmation of God's unity is a judgment, a confirmation, an assent and acceptance that can find its sustainer present with all things, that sees in all things a path leading to its creator and does not regard anything as an obstacle to his presence. Let me read that again. The true affirmation of God's unity is a judgment, a confirmation, an assent and acceptance that can find its sustainer present with all things. An assent and acceptance that can find its sustainer present with all things. That's a good ascension. An assent and acceptance that can find its sustainer present with all things. So whatever, it's always the sustainer that is in one's conclusion, one's mind. that sees in all things a path leading to its creator and does not regard anything as an obstacle to his presence. For otherwise it would always be necessary to tear and cast aside the veil of the cosmos. For otherwise it would always be necessary to tear and cast aside the veil of the cosmos in order to find its sustainer. Onward, then, said the traveler to himself, as he knocked at the door of God's sublimity and grandeur. He entered the stopping place of God's deeds and workings, the world of creation and origination, and there he saw that 5 comprehensive truths were prevailing over the entire cosmos and offering self-evident proof of the divine unity. All right, so I will take a pause here to hear if anybody would like to share anything about what we're trying to accomplish here in this particular section. Yes, Brother Ali, please take it away.
Thank you. In this particular last section that we read, last 2 paragraphs, the author gave the example of Sufi tradition, which keeps repeating the words, constantly repeating the words, La ilaha illahu. Now, in the Sufi tradition, in principle, not that some people may pay attention to, but in principle, they are actually encouraged not to use logic, and they don't really refer to the universe, the creation out there. But what they do, that's why imaginary species of knowledge is not really a base for one's confirmation of absoluteness of the creator. Imagination means not taking, as the following paragraph explained it. It says, tearing and casting aside the veil of the cosmos in order to find its sustainer. It means trying to forget about the universe. It is very famous for them, for the expression they use, that nothing really matters. We should ignore, put aside the universe, the matter. This is a veil. So this veil should be removed, and we have to be in the presence of God. And then just keep repeating the phrase, no God but He, la ilaha illahu, la ilaha illahu, demonstrates that acknowledging, becoming aware of the absoluteness of the Creator has limitless degree from our side. Our recognition of it has limitless degree, but the conclusion as the Creator must be an absolute one has no degrees, no grades. Absolute has no degrees. But our cognition of it has degrees. But author said, yes, it's a good habit that we learn from Sufi tradition, that we have to repeat La ilaha illahu in such a way so many times in order to acknowledge the degrees of acknowledging the absoluteness of the Creator from our side. That is correct, but not in the same way as the Sufi tradition does. They keep repeating La ilaha illahu phrase so that they get closer to their creator. But the author says, if you don't put aside the veil of the universe, but try to see in the creation of everything the manifested qualities of the creator, nothing can prevent the presence of the absolute being to human being. They become a mirror rather than an obstacle, rather than a veil. They become a vehicle rather than a veil. Now, we can understand the veil metaphor in two ways. Of course, the veil is a curtain which may be used as in order to prevent the people who are seeing what is behind the curtain. That is a veil now. But there is another curtain that when you reflect something like the screen of the computer, something is reflected on it, although something is reflecting and we don't know, we don't see what is reflecting, but when we look at the screen, we see the qualities of what is reflecting. So the screen has two different metaphoric meaning. The Sufis says universe is the screen like a veil between the absolute being and human being. So it should be removed. Nursi says what the Quran says, universe is not a veil. It is a screen where the qualities of the Creator is manifested. That is why when you remove the universe aside and try to imagine the presence of God, it becomes an imaginary way of obtaining knowledge of God. But the Quran, and therefore Nursi claims that we should use the universe as a screen where God is manifesting his qualities so that I can see his presence in my own understanding and logically follow that. It is, in terms of logic, is deemed to opposite of imagination. Logic will follow that this thing cannot come into existence by itself. So this is not an imaginary conclusion. This is a real life experience conclusion. I think we can always find the presence of the absolute being within all things, and it doesn't become an imaginary belief. Mostly what people do, or we may do as well, not blame the people, we may realize also we may fall, or I may fall into this mistaken attitude in my own life. I say, this universe must have a creator. Yeah, I understood. Looking at the universe, of course, this is the evidence out there. Now the creator. What am I going to do now? There are two ways. Either imagining the creator and then trying to say that his power is absolute, if it is the creator. So I can try to imagine his absolute power, so that I have to repeat La ilaha illahu, La ilaha illahu. There is no God but he. There is no God but he. Yeah, try to attribute everything to him rather than looking at looking at the things. Get rid of all these obstacles, veils away from, so that my heart, as they claim, to be to open to be in the presence of the Creator. That's why La ilaha illahu, La ilaha illahu. Repeat the word. But thinking from God's perspective. But the Quran, and of course, Nurse says, I subscribe to the method of the Quran. Anything I can see and think about its existence, I conclude La ilaha illahu. It means this thing cannot create itself, La ilaha. So it is given existence by the one who created the universe, Illahu. So one of them is by repeating, trying to remove the veils away. The other one is by repeating, observing, seeing, looking at the universe, and try to see that they cannot come into existence. Their qualities cannot come into existence by themselves or by the thing itself. So repetition is valid in both cases: imaginary confirmation of absoluteness of God, or logical confirmation of absoluteness of the Creator God. Repetition is there. One of them is imagining God and trying to get away the veils. The other one is observing the creation, and in each, as a result of each observation, coming to the conclusion and concluding that La ilaha illahu, there is no God but He. That is the difference between Sufi tradition and Quranic tradition. And Nursi says, I follow Quranic tradition. It is logically confirmable, acceptable, and also very practical, so that I will have no doubt about my conclusion, because it is not based on imagination. It is based on observation and logical conclusion. Thank you.
Thank you, Brother Ali. Adam, please go ahead.
Assalamu alaikum. Some disturbances around me, so if it's against all, my apologies. The Sufi tradition goes to imagination, and therefore, as was said, doesn't, as though not just leaps over the creation, but disregards the creation, sees it as a veil, as an impediment between them and God. That's what I understand from what you've described, or what's been described, even maybe indirectly, or the phrases here. So those who follow the Quran's methodology, they look at the universe and seeing that the qualities shown on the creatures here don't come from the creatures themselves through their own rational and also consciousness, and also but using the Quran's teachings, showing and seeing how the things are not the source of their own selves, and conclude La ilaha illahu. So does the story stop there for the one using the Quran's methodology? Because the Sufi tradition says you become near to God, you traverse in the layers or stations between you and God. I'm sure you're familiar with that, everyone, or maybe people have read about these things. And And so where is the station? One of the questions, where are the kind of stations, or does this notion exist? And then also, where is the kind of nearness of God to God and to this that the Sufis claim to receive as a result of what they are doing? Is it also imagination? Is there any kind of value and merit? Not just merit, it's a different methodology, I understand. But they also have claimed to receive much benefit from these things and also live in a kind of presence or consciousness of God in a way, although not through physical things, not through the physical creatures they see here, the creation, but through their own methodologies, however they have arrived at. And so that's what I'm really getting at. Is there not an imagination aspect that happens in the Quranic methodology, or is it completely non-imagination based?
Good question. You see, like, I'm understanding the Quranic methodology is based on evidence. It's more experiential. And I'm not too familiar with the Sufi tradition, as you kind of described it a little bit, on how the imagination is used to get to different levels, to different stages. But the starting point is imagination. It's not based on evidence or experience. And I'm trying to understand this a little bit more also a little bit. So, the veil as we understand it in our different discussions that we're having, we lift the veil in terms of getting to the qualities and concluding about the absoluteness. So every event, every creation acts as a veil for me. But I was kind of like, I didn't grasp exactly what the point Brother Ali was making, distinction between a screen and a veil. So Brother Ali, you can clarify that a little bit more on what that difference is. But that definitely, I mean, it needs your human experience and engagement to come to the conclusions. And it cannot be just some art, imagination kind of conclusions. So anybody else or Brother Ali? Brother Ali, please go ahead.
We should speak in terms of principles, not in terms of people's personal experience. We don't know what a person does this, how they feel about it, and none of our business. You and I must try to experience it in myself. For example, concluding there is a God, there must be God, and this God is the creator of the universe. It must be really absolute. I'm convinced that's correct. And afterwards, how are you going to live in his presence? Try to say that this God is so huge, impossible to reach the end. So there cannot be anything equal to it. That is one way. And keep saying La ilaha illahu. Not only lip service, no, just past repetition is done in order to confirm the concluded, the previous conclusion. But imagine, that is what Nurse says, that's imagination. Now, afterwards, of course, concluding that there must be an absolute creator, this is not imagination, that is a logical conclusion. But everybody must start from here. Afterwards, what is happening in order to penetrate into the absoluteness of God and get closer to him and see his presence in your personal life, always present with you, this absolute being. Nurse says that is Quranic tradition This always claims that we follow Quranic. Literally, it doesn't say here in this particular two paragraphs. But it always says we follow Quranic tradition, we follow Quranic methodology. All right. Now, Nursi says, according to what he understood from the teachings of the Quran and also life experience, we have to keep repeating La ilaha illahu as a result of the conclusion of our experience or our observation of the universe, in everything, whatever you see in the world, in even yourself. So you and I need to experience it within myself. Now, when it comes to literal search in the Quran, belief on imagination is Quran is there is I don't remember any verse saying that although they don't see any evidence, but they still believe in God. I don't see any statement in the Quran. The Quran is replete of the examples of looking at the universe, seeing the universe, using their reasoning, using their intellect, using their basira, insight. And if you ask them who created the universe, they say, and the Quran, of course, asks this rhetoric question and comes up with this. They would say God, and that's correct. Yeah, but why at the end you would attribute some divine qualities to other things? Why do you believe in God behind? So why don't you carry from it? It means, how did I come or how did I reach the concept of the creator? By looking at the universe. I didn't come with the concept of the creator with no evidence whatsoever. No one can have it. I have to look at the universe, see how wonderful it is, and then come to the conclusion. And the Quran keeps saying, conclude from it. Continue from this point now. You look at the universe, go in searching within the universe one by one, each, because وَلِلَّهِ جُنُودُ السَّمَاوَاتِ وَالْأَرْضِ, the previous paragraphs mentioned this. The soldiers are the gods, are the armies of the heavens and earth. What does it mean? Anything which is created in the universe is a soldier of God's army. What do? They fight against simple way of expressing it, shirk. It means assigning any power to anything other than the absolute creator. How? Because when you look at them, they have no quality to claim the ownership of their existence. All the qualities appear on them. They are all witnessing, working, fighting to defend the belief in God. This is what the Quran says. In the imagination, I don't think there is an imagination mentioned about belief, but what the Quran says, they attribute some divine qualities to their false claimed God through imagination. They can have no evidence for it. That is what the Quran says, as far as I know. I don't think there is any support of imaginary belief in the Quran. That is my conclusion. And of course, I'm responsible for it. I just share it with you. If you like, you can go and search for it.
Thank you, Brother Ali. Sohail, would you like to say anything? You put a comment.
Assalamu alaikum. No, it was just to what Ali Member said about imagination and the Quran. He doesn't really make a reference to imagination other than dhan, or speculation or imagination, but as it pertains to kufr or denial. So it's yeah, as he says, there's nothing. It's always about, have you looked at this or that? Why don't you look at this? Why don't you consider that? So using tangible things or reality or the things out there, rather than condemning the universe. Where I think Norty says in some other place where they condemn the universe to non-existence, essentially.
Agreed. Thank you. Yeah, I think the whole point is about feeling the presence of your Lord in everything. That's my takeaway. So, Adam, you had your hand up. I saw that. Would you like to say anything?
Sure. Since we're on the topic of repetition, and the comments made for previously are all very helpful, and it's very good, alhamdulillah. But I want to just ask, since we're on the topic of repetition, this methodology, the Quranic methodology, how does it correspond to those acts in religious ritual life that are repetitive? Because here we're saying, the text is showing they are constantly repeating the words, no God but He. And I think this sentence relates to the methodology, maybe as well, but there is also repetition in the prophetic traditions. I know we are going out of the verse, but if it's okay, if it's not okay, we don't have to go here. But in the prophetic traditions are also repetitions. How does the Quranic methodology apply in those cases? If it makes sense.
So the repetitions happens with our experience all the time, based on how much we're engaged with the universe. In the Quranic methodology, as Suhail also said, about it keeps asking about, why don't you look at this? Did you look at that? Look at the ant, look at the mountains, and look at the events that happens in my daily life. Look at, when you wake up, you sleep, you eat, you get hungry. All those are opportunities, again, to engage and wonder at all this existence I'm going through is La ilaha illallah. I can conclude this. One is more of forceful and recalling with imagination and proclaiming. I mean, that may be one way, but so every way, there are many ways one can go and do this repetition. But our journey in this life is another form of engaging with this repetitive way of doing it. Just like we get hungry every other day, and it's a repetition nonstop. We seek for improving our lives. It's a repetitive process. So our spirit also needs to conclude at every different moments, opportunities that La ilaha illahu. I mean, if anybody else would like to share anything, please go ahead. Brother Ali, you had your hand up. Go ahead, Brother Ali.
Now, repetition is not rejected, and the text also doesn't reject, and Quran also doesn't reject, because the Quran is remembrance, dhikr, remembrance, and reminders. All the words includes also repetitive reminding, repetitive remembering, because remembrance doesn't take once. Quran is full of repetition. The universe is full of repetition. Human life is full of repetition, as Asim said. We just keep repeating, breathing in and out, and inhale, exhale, eating also every day. But there is a difference between in Sufi tradition as well as in Quranic tradition. The repetition is not exactly the same. Repetition is reconfirming, advancing in the realization of the same truth. levels of the same truth. Like the numbers in mathematics. The numbers in mathematics is nothing but repetition. 1 plus 2, 1, 1 plus 2, 1 plus 2, 1, 1 plus 2, 1 plus 2, 1 to 1, continue, 1 plus 1 plus 1 plus 4, 1 plus 5, 1 equals 5, 5, 1 plus 1 equals 6. But always repeating one addition, but the result always change. From 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, result change. It means gradual penetration into the presence of God in one's life. Quran's repetition seems to be lots of verses are repeating, but when we look at these verses in different contexts, which are taken in different contexts, then according to the color and the subject of the change, the repeated same sentence has a different hue of meaning. Now, the universe every day changes, but every day is the same repetition of the day. Sun rises, sunset, sun rises, sunset. But every day, sun rises in a different context, sun sets in a different context. And every day the things are coming into existence, giving existence anew with a different, slightly different. Especially in animate beings, you can easily see that in yourself, in myself, I am different from yesterday, although my existence seems to be repeated, but in a different form. What else? In our life is the same. We eat, but we receive this message again and again in different forms, within different contexts. These are, this is a very interesting subject. If someone says, what does Quran teach? Really, nothing but one thing. No God but He. That's it. That is what the Quran teaches. What is my life? What does my life say? My life? Acknowledge your Creator. Contact with Him. But this is repeated. My life is repeated. This one, acknowledging the Creator, acknowledging the Creator. But in my relationship with the Creator has infinite degrees. By acknowledging the Creator, I have to go through infinite stages of acknowledgement. So repetition is reality, but in which form? Either saying La ilaha illahu, La ilaha illahu, and trying to eliminate the impediments of the universe between me and God. The other one is utilizing, turning the face of this universe in the form of a mirror, not a shield between me and God. It is a mirror between me and my God. That is how the Quran teaches. That is how I am personally satisfied with. I have to repeat La ilaha illahu where? Anytime I see something, La ilaha illahu, it cannot come into existence. These qualities cannot be really from the things. They are the manifestations. They must be the manifestations of the source of existence of that thing. The same thing, La ilaha illahu, La ilaha illahu, La ilaha illahu. Everywhere is the repetition. Nothing wrong with the repetition. And the Quran is the name of the Quran. In the Quran is dhikr. Dhikr also includes repetition in it. Remembering something that you knew, you learned, you experienced before. So, nothing wrong with repetition, but the method of repeating oneself is important.
Jazakallah, Brother Ali. Any other comment by anyone before we close the session, inshallah, for today? All right. Thank
Oh,
you.
sorry. I was just gonna.
Yeah, go ahead.
I was just gonna add on to that, in that, essentially, let's say if something every day, a hunger, essentially hunger is repetitive in essence, but the manifestation of hunger is always very different. Um, as Ali Imran was saying, in the context of when I'm hungry, where I'm hungry, how I'm hungry, and then also how do I address that hunger? What do I eat? How do I eat it? What sort of food? And there's never, not even food, not even two, it's the same food twice is the same, or does it taste exactly the same, or does my experience of it the same? So essentially, there's, I guess, in essence, there's repetition from the perspective of the quality, the essential quality. So, for example, the quality of life, which belongs to absolute, or life giving, belongs to absolute, that in essence is repetitive and the same because the source is absolute. And so the absolute source is unchanging. However, my experience of it, because I'm a created contingent being, my experience of it is at every time, at every point in life, different. So that's why, to me, it looks like things are repetitive, but they appear to be so because the source is, or must be absolute. But how it manifests, because that source must be absolute, it never repeats outwardly.
Thank you, Sohail. So different flavors of repetitiveness. Like you said, even the universe shows different flavors of repetitiveness, and the speech of the creator, Quran, also has different flavors of repetitiveness. Depends on what filter, what kind of telescope I'm looking through, and what kind of feelings I have. It's interesting, very beautifully, how the repetition becomes so beautiful as well. Inshallah, thank you everyone. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. سبحانك لا علم لنا إلا ما علمتنا إنك أنت العليم الحكيم وآخر دعوانا الحمد لله رب العالمين. بحرمة سورة الفاتحة.